I wanted to talk about uh, the argument of thick or thin client software approaches. Um, and I just wanted to kind of do some general comparisons, but ultimately, I think the thin architecture is probably best. Uh, with that, I mean, the thin architecture is, more on the server side for computing and things like that. So, not necessarily like the client is having to do a lot of that work. Um, and there's no, specialized software or things like that. Um, and the client can only run exactly how the server dictates. And also with that, there's, less of a security threat as well. Um, with the thin clients, and with thick, a significant portion of the computing is done on the client side, so your work desktop and things like that, and it can't rely on the server alone. Um, and there are going to be more security issues as it has to be connected to a network, a more public network, I guess you would say. Um, and there'd be more kind of a validation between the two on the client side as well. Um, but I mean, in terms of thick versus thin, um, the thin client is much better in like offices, workspaces where you're doing repetitive things constantly. So like a doctor's office or like an airport where they're like printing off tickets and scanning tickets and things like that. And even like, I mean, depending on the school, maybe like a primary or secondary school, um, which, is great. But yeah, I think thin is probably the best out of the two in terms of that because you don't necessarily need your workspaces to be doing that kind of computing or, have that much freedom, especially if you have very sensitive information. I mean, I'm pretty sure the way, the clients are laid out that thin clients are usually used in like government kind of stuff because there is more security with it only connecting directly to the server and kind of having the server do most of the work. I mean, there are downsides, as in like if the server goes down, there will be that halt of work in progress in the client. But other than that, I think that depending on the work, I really think that the thin client architecture would probably work out pretty well in comparison to the thick client because it does require thick does require additional things to be added, additional softwares and additional applications to be added to the computer in order for it to run um, on its own because it's doing a majority of the computing on the client side rather than on the server side. So I just kind of wanted to give my 2 cents in regards to that, and kind of wanted to see what you guys thought about the thick or thin clients and your arguments for one side or the other.